One of the best things about the Legend of Zelda series are the unique items that you find on your adventures. Now, they could be items that you found searching Hyrule, or they might be unique items related to a dungeon or a particular enemy or NPC in the game. Or maybe it's even a musical instrument that helps you manipulate time. Well, Breath of the Wild had a few of these, but today I want to put forward the case for the return of more unique items in Breath of the Wild 2, plus look at some of the best items we've seen in the Legend of Zelda franchise. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Zelda content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. Well, before we dive into discussing items in Breath of the Wild 2 today, I would love to hear from you and which items you'd like to see return to the game. Do you want to see a new and improved hookshot, a classic from the series? Or do you want to see some Pegasus boots? Or maybe even Rock's cape? Maybe you don't want to see items come back and you like the way that Breath of the Wild dealt with them. Let me know in the comments and let's kick off that discussion. Well, first of all, I want to clarify what I mean by items returning. We did have some items in Breath of the Wild, but to me, they didn't really feel the same as some of the unique items that we've had in the past. So this conversation almost goes hand in hand with the breakable weapons discussion we had in a recent video. For example, the boomerang used to be an item you found in a dungeon, or you could buy it from a shop, and you could use it all throughout the game. And then later, in a particular Zelda game, you could upgrade the boomerang for it to travel further distances. The hammer is another example, also found in Breath of the Wild. So both the hammer and the boomerang changed to discoverable weapons out there in Hyrule, which would then break after a certain amount of time. Other items were worked into Breath of the Wild in different ways. So bombs, they are a traditional item that were bought in shops or found in dungeons in past Zelda games. And the Sheikah Slate was introduced in Breath of the Wild, and the bomb rune was one of the features of the Sheikah Slate. This meant you could throw unlimited bombs as long as you adhered to the cooldown of the bomb rune. You got these straight away in the first hour of the game. Now, some items from the Zelda series do exist in Breath of the Wild in their original form. For example, you've got bottles. They are very, very useful, always have been, especially if you want to put a fairy in there and save it for later if you die. You also had ice and fire rods. They're also available in Breath of the Wild, although once again, they were breakable. I don't really have anything against breakable weapons. I do think it's likely they are going to return in Breath of the Wild 2. However, I do feel breakable weapons slightly modify the relationship I have with items in Zelda games. Well, next up, let's have a look at Breath of the Wild 2 specifically. So we have had a sneak peek at one potential item in Breath of the Wild 2, thanks to the E3 2021 trailer. So here we see a champion's tunic wearing Link with an attachment on his left arm. It looks quite bulky and wooden, and Link shoots flames at an enemy before backflipping out of the way of an attack. Therefore, it looks like we are getting a flamethrower in Breath of the Wild 2. Well, Link also appears to reverse time in another shot sequence, where a spiked ball is rolling down a hill. Here, Link throws out his right hand this time, rather than an attachment being on his left arm, and he either manipulates time or projects the ball back up the hill. I do think that it's Link manipulating time, but we don't have confirmation yet from Nintendo, other than a few clues in some patents. We have seen some concept art with Link appearing to have different functions or attachments on his arm. So we see a hook shot, we've got a beetle, a hammer, and also a bow variation. Whether this is going to make it into the final game, we don't know, but it's an interesting idea. It's one that could replace the Sheikah Slate, and one that could provide us with more item-like functionality for Link. Rather than finding items, perhaps we find different arm attachments or arm abilities throughout Breath of the Wild 2. Well, next up, I want to have a quick look at musical items in the game. So there is a precedence for musical items in the Legend of Zelda series. The ocarina is arguably the most famous of the instruments in the franchise. So we've had the bone ocarina, the fairy ocarina, the ocarina of wind, and of course, the ocarina of time. Link has also played other woodwind instruments with flutes, and also a recorder too, and also Deku pipes. They were featured in Majora's Mask, and Skull Kid from Twilight Princess uses a bell horn to summon his puppets. So string instruments have also featured in Legend of Zelda games, including Sheik's harp. That was used to teach Link warping songs. We got the Harp of Ages. That was the first string instrument used directly by Link. That allows him to travel through time, similar to the ocarina. The goddess harp featured in Skyward Sword, that was first owned by Princess Zelda, although it was passed down to Link, which he then used to open the gates to the Silent Realms. You know, Breath of the Wild was seriously lacking in regards to Link playing a musical instrument, so Cass, our travelling Rito friend, took up much of the responsibility when it came to playing a musical instrument, but given the importance of musical instruments in the Legend of Zelda series, I think it would be a really good idea to see one return in the game in Breath of the Wild 2. So next up, I want to take a closer look at some of the best items from the Legend of Zelda series, in my humble opinion. But I really would love to hear from you and what you want to see return, and share your suggestions in the comments. So I'd love to hear about your favourite items and also which game you discovered them in. So first up for me, we've got the Power Glove. Now this one is also known as the Handy Glove, and that allows Link to lift heavy objects. So in some of the games, it's eventually replaced by the more powerful Titan's Mitt. So in others, it's an upgrade to the Power Bracelet. Now this one is featured in The Adventures of Link, A Link to the Past, Oracle of Ages, and also A Link Between Worlds. Well, next up we got the Pegasus Boots, and they are also known as the Pegasus Shoes, and they allow Link to sprint at high speeds. Now, the increased speed allows Link to use dash attacks, and also bash into various objects like trees, in order to knock out their contents. So for example, in the Minish Cap, Link receives the Pegasus Boots after helping Rem and his Minish helpers in making them. They are required to cross the Castor Wilds, and you gain entrance to the Fortress of Winds. So this is what I was missing from Breath of the Wild. Really like the interaction between the items and the environments. I would love to see more of that in Breath of the Wild 2. Well, next up we've got Rock's Cape. So this one was a suggestion from a viewer, so thank you to you. So Rock's Cape is an item that allows Link to jump and glide over holes between platforms. So in Oracle of Seasons, and it's an upgraded version of Rock's Feather hidden in the Explorer's Crypt. It allows Link to cross wider gaps and evade enemy attacks by granting the ability to glide across 3 spaces and also double jump too. This one is also used in traversing the dungeons and in the fight against Gleeok, allowing Link to become airborne in order to evade Gleeok's stomping attack. So again, it's not only the interaction with the environment or the dungeon, but it's also that unique item that you have to use against the boss. Really missed that in the original Breath of the Wild. Well, next up we got one of my favourites, and this one is the Mirror Shield. So this one is a powerful shield that allows Link to reflect light beams or magic from one place to another. So in A Link to the Past, that's one of my favourite Zelda games of all time, the Mirror Shield is the strongest shield that Link can obtain. It's better than the previous 2 shields, known for its ability to stop beams such as those fired by laser eyes and attacks from enemies such as Lynels, and it can even reflect Wizrobe projectiles. That's really powerful, that one, and also it looks really cool too. So also featured in Ocarina of Time, the Mirror Shield is the final shield that Link can acquire in his adventure. So unlike the Hylian Shield, the Mirror Shield has a polished surface, allowing it to reflect light, much like it did in A Link to the Past. And that allows Link to solve puzzles in the dungeon. So the Mirror Shield really brings back a lot of memories for me, especially with A Link to the Past. Absolutely love that game. Well, finally, we've got my absolute favourite item from the Legend of Zelda series, and yes, it is the hookshot. So hookshots are machines consisting of a chain and a hook. So when used, the chains extend and send the hook attached towards their target. If the hook latches onto certain objects, Link is projected towards those objects, and Link can also use a hookshot to pull enemies and objects towards him. So in nearly all the games, the hookshot is almost always found inside a dungeon, and a recurring trend in the series of the hookshot is typically found inside a water-themed or flooded dungeon as well, so that's an interesting fact. Such as the Swamp Palace in A Link to the Past, or also you got Catfish's Maw in Link's Awakening. Hookshot is usually guarded by the dungeon's mini-boss, and often the hookshot is necessary to navigate the remainder of the dungeon it is found in. It's also often required to defeat the dungeon boss. So again, a really good example of an item interacting with the dungeon or its environment and being used to defeat the boss. I think that was really something that was lacking from the original Breath of the Wild, and I'd love to see that interaction return in Breath of the Wild 2. Well, that is a rundown of 5 of my favourite items from the Legend of Zelda series, and let me know what you think about items coming in Breath of the Wild 2. Do you want some classics to return, or do you want to see a musical instrument? So share your thoughts with the community down there in the comments. Well, that is it for this look at unique items potentially returning in Breath of the Wild 2. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Legend of Zelda content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to Triforce Times. Or you can check me out on Twitter at Triforce Times. I would love to hear from you on Twitter. It'd be really, really good to get your questions or your comments. Let me know at Triforce Times and I'll see you there. Well, if you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out all the other videos on the channel about the Legend of Zelda, and especially the speculation about Breath of the Wild 2. Well, once again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you really, really soon.